Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We are at NJIT. This is One-on-One, Newark at a Crossroads. We are pleased to welcome our good friend, Chris Cerf, who is the Superintendent of the Newark Public Schools, former Commissioner of Education in the state. I didn't think I was going to ever say this, Superintendent of Newark Public Schools. Why?
First of all, thanks so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you again. Why? I believe in the work. Newark is a city on the rise. It's led by a great mayor, and I think that together we can build a truly great school system. There's been a lot of work done. There's been a little bit of controversy you may have noticed.
Cami Anderson was there just last summer. We're doing this in August of 2015. Last summer she was sitting there talking, and she was a superintendent. She's not there any longer. How are things going to be different?
Well, there will be some things that are different and some things that will stay the same.
How will things improve, put it that way?
Well, let me tell you what I believe in and what I'm committed to. I am committed to, first and foremost, to working with the mayor and the board and the community to craft a path to local control. Secondly, I am committed to a dialogue that is organized around a central value, and that is, let's make sure that every decision we make is based on what is in the best interests of children. I know that the dialogue has gotten away from us on all sides a little bit. I'm hoping that we can find common ground around that value. Third, I'm very committed to openness and transparency. What's essentially happened, Steve, is that two narratives have developed in Newark. There are those that view this as a narrative of failure, and those who I think view this as a narrative of progress. And
what's your narrative?
I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but not to their own set of facts. And until we can agree on what the facts are here, we're not going to be able to move forward together to build a great school system. I believe a lot of progress has been made. I believe that the team that has been hard work.
Where has there been progress made? By the way, to put things in perspective, when Chris Cerf talks about local control, that's reference to the fact that since 1995, the Newark Public Schools have been run by the state of New Jersey. The state, because of the state constitution of 1947, it is a state responsibility. The state took over the public schools. Local control means moving the schools back from the state to the local government. Progress, where specifically?
Well, there's been progress in a number of different ways. First of all, the graduation rate is improved considerably, and that's probably the most important statistic of all.
High school?
High school graduation rate. It's gone from the mid-50s up into the mid-60s. The percentage of students who are graduating from high school having passed what our exit exam here in the state called the HESPA has gone up significantly. There's been some very important work in professional development. We have a world-class contract with our teachers union.
Stay on that. Why is that a world-class contract? What makes it that?
Well, in a number of different ways. First and foremost, it starts with the premise that everyone agrees on, that a great teacher is the most important thing we can do for our children. It says that teachers who are great should be rewarded for their greatness. It says that teachers should not automatically move up the compensation schedule unless they have proven themselves to be at least effective. And you don't see these things in contracts across the country. I had a tremendously strong working relationship with the union leadership when I was involved in this several years ago.
You know, it's interesting, the whole question of tying teacher pay to student performance. How do you see it?
Well, first of all, I think we need to respect the fact that teachers are the hardest working public servants in the country and in the city. And I don't think anybody goes to work every day as a teacher and says, I'm going to work harder or I'm going to work better if I get paid more. But I also think that we need to recognize that when a teacher does give a truly exemplary performance, even if it's only for symbolic reasons, it's important to recognize that and to celebrate that. I also think that the traditional compensation system we've had in schools, which is basically scheduled step raises every year of
based on seniority?
Yes, every year of additional services leads to an automatic compensation, is not the right way to go. The right way to go is to say, so long as you are on track and continue to be effective or highly effective, you ought to go up. And by the way, I wish we were able to pay our teachers more. We gave a lot of very substantial raises in the contract, by the way. So I think that's a more sensible way to proceed than to simply say everybody is on a path and everybody is moving along that path equally, regardless of how students are learning.
But the other side to that, and Chris, as commissioner, you and I have had very interesting conversations, particularly with my colleague on Capitol Report, Raphael P. Ramon, on public television. And we talked about how difficult it is to get teachers who are not performing well out of the classroom. In the city of Newark, a significant number of teachers are quote unquote unassigned. Tell me if my math is wrong. You've done that before.
No, that's correct.
Well, let me give you the numbers and tell me if it's wrong. 453 unassigned teachers. That's 15% of all the Newark Public School teachers are unassigned. Our math says that costs about $35 million. Unassigned. What does that mean?
Well, here's what's going on, and here's what's happening. First of all, that number has been cut nearly in half.
Meaning they're assigned?
They are assigned, or when the music stops by the beginning of the school year, they will be assigned. So one of the things that our team has been working very, very hard on is to bring that number down dramatically. And to their credit, not mine, they've made a great deal of progress. But Steve, I think it's important to start with the sort of rock and the hard place we're in. We want our schools to be great schools. We want our schools to be led by great principals, and most of them are, by the way. But we all know that the real action is in the classroom, right? And the really great schools in this country and in this city are those where everybody is pulling the oar in the same direction. There's a culture of achievement. To say to a principal, or to a faculty for that matter, that you must take a particular teacher, even if you don't think the chemistry is right or that person doesn't have what it takes to help the team be successful, that's a pretty big ask, to hold people accountable for results and say that they don't get to choose who their colleagues are. So the value reflected in this pool that you're referring to is the right value. We don't want to force schools to take teachers. By the way, it's not good for the teachers either. At the same time, we have a financial consequence to deal with. So we have crafted a system that tries to protect that value as much as possible, but is also realistic about the fiscal constraints.
In an effort not to get too inside, and again, you're a policy person, you're a visionary, but the idea of quote unquote one Newark, and again, our audience is in many, many states, and so they might have heard of one Newark, it probably didn't, haven't heard of it. One Newark is an initiative that changes a lot of things about the Newark Public Schools, about the way it's set up and where kids will be going to school and where they can go, and shutting some schools down. And a lot of controversy was built around that, and Cami Anderson sat there and she talked about it and stood up and stood strong for it, and Ros Baraka and others made it clear they didn't like it. Without getting into the minutia of it, is that a major piece of your agenda, or do you say that was that agenda?
Here's how I think about it. We have to get away from the words and the brand, and we have to focus on what we believe in.
And what the name is.
I spend a lot of time talking to parents, a lot of time talking to parents and teachers.
What do they want, Chris?
Here's what they want. First of all, politics aside, they want to make sure that every public school in Newark is a great school. They are indifferent to whether that school is a magnet school, like arts or science, whether it's a traditional public school, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a county voc-ed school. No, what they care about is that their choice is respected, that the choice is fair, nobody's advantaged in that, and that every school is a great school. So I do believe in that. I also believe that equity is really important.
Equity.
What I mean by that is you don't want to allow schools to not take their fair share of kids with the greatest level of needs. You want to make sure that there are no games played in who gets access to the great schools in Newark. And also you want to make sure that, that parents are given the choice about where their kid goes to school. One of the great forms of, one of the great disservices, I think, is when policymakers go, we have this sort of abstract idea about what's right for people, and we know what's right for the system, right? Look, I have 3 children. I know you have your share.
We talk a lot about our kids and,
we
and
do.
their education.
We do. When someone says to you, well, I know better than you what's right for your kids, I'm sure it would make you a little cranky.
That's right.
And so I am very much a believer in saying that all parents should be asked what they want for their kids, and the degree to which we can honor that choice, we ought to do that. Now, look, it's important to also understand that some schools are oversubscribed.
Meaning?
Meaning there's a supply and demand disequilibrium, that there are more applicants for that school than there are places in the school. And we have a law, by the way, that says for pre-K, you can't have more than 15 students in a classroom. So when schools are oversubscribed, not everybody's going to be able to get their choice honored. So what I do believe in, and what I know parents believe in, is that you have neutral, fair rules. For example, we want to give what's called sibling preference in this world.
Sibling preference.
Now, what I mean by that is that if you already have a child in a school and you have a second child coming along, you want to give a preference for that open slot to a parent who already has a child
Because
in the
it would
school.
be an inconvenience if those kids were split up.
Exactly. They're going off to work. They don't want to go to multiple different campuses to drop their kids off. So how do you prioritize sibling preference over, for example, neighborhood preference? How do you prioritize sibling preference over, we want to make sure that all schools have an appropriate level of support for special education. These are hard policy calls.
But Chris, what I'm curious about this is with the community trust issue being what it is, with the level of vitriol and a lot of the protests that were there. And again, Cammie Anderson stood up, she dealt with it. She did not, at a certain point, she stopped going to certain meetings, public meetings. And when I asked her about it, she said she was not going to be abused or bullied, and that was her choice. But there was a reaction to that on the part of many in the community. How do you see yourself in terms of putting yourself out there in this city? There's a reason why it's called Brick City. It's a tough city on a lot of levels. Putting yourself out there in a position to be criticized and have those questions and the criticism head on.
So I am very committed to engagement, to involvement. I've got a pretty thick skin. I am not comparing myself to my predecessor or anyone else, but I will tell you that I have come to this position with the stated commitment, which I'm already acting on in the first 4 weeks I've been there, to reach out, to listen, to engage with parents, with elected officials, with the school advisory board, with the mayor, and with his staff. I believe that a critical part of the future success of the Newark public school system is to have an open dialogue around the central value of how do we make decisions in the best interest of children.
You've been in many leadership positions over the years. I don't need to ask you this. The most important leadership lesson you've learned to date is?
You can't have an ego in this business.
What? This is New Jersey.
You get to a certain point in life and a certain age, and you realize that a lot of things are going to get said, and a lot of people have a lot of different agendas. You have to have a belief system and a set of convictions that you believe in. But more importantly than even that is to realize that often you're wrong. And that people around you, whether they're in the community or whether they're colleagues or public servants or parents and so on, you have to be able to listen carefully to what they have to say. Now, listening and agreeing are not always the same thing, and that's often confused. But you have to be able to listen, change, and adapt.
Chris Cerf used to head up the state public schools, all the schools in the state. Now he heads up the public schools in Newark, and either way, it's a tough job, and you always come and answer the questions. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Stay right there.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been provided by NJIT, TD Bank, the Fidelco Group, United Airlines, Verizon Communications, the Northward Center, and by PSE&G. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been produced in cooperation with FiOS One News.